Okay, we are talking about nerve chemicals, nerve transmission chemicals, so-called neurotransmitters, and specifically acetylcholine as it relates to cigarette smoke, as well as to, we're going to talk about as it relates to cigarette smoke, as well as to pesticides and nerve gas. But before we do that, I want to touch on something that we talked about at the end of the program yesterday, a subject that seems to have sparked a lot of interest. I got several emails. Seems to have struck a nerve on this subject of aluminum. Toxicity and aluminum buildup. Got 3 emails actually on this subject, and I think I may have caused a little bit of confusion. So let me see if I can clarify my thoughts, and then we'll move on to talking about acetylcholine and lipofuscin and nerve gas and tobacco and cigarette smoking and pesticides. All right, so a couple of points I want to make here about aluminum. First of all, most importantly, a little over 8% of the Earth's crust is aluminum. After silica and after oxygen, it's the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust, and it's the most abundant metal. And that means that our earthly environment, our terrestrial environment, is packed with aluminum. Americans get somewhere in the order of 25 to 35 milligrams of aluminum every day, which in terms of minerals is quite a bit. Some of that comes from plants, some of that comes from cooking utensils, some of that comes from food processing chemicals, some of it may come from chemtrails and toxicity, but because aluminum is so poorly absorbed by the body when we're healthy, for most of us, aluminum ingestion is going to, the aluminum that we're ingesting, I should say, is going to be excreted out of our bodies. So it's not going to be a big problem for most of us. Now, while metallic, non-plant aluminum is toxic if it's ingested in sufficient quantities, and by the way, nobody knows what those sufficient quantities are, and because of the fact that aluminum is so poorly absorbed and most of the stuff that we ingest is going to be excreted, more than likely aluminum is not an issue, even though non-plant processed aluminum, yes, is probably toxic. It's important to keep in mind, however, that the studies that are done on aluminum toxicity are typically done on non-plant forms of aluminum. And they also tend to be done using large quantities of aluminum. According to an article that was published in the journal Environmental Health Perspectives, this is a quote, levels of 5 to 50 times the normal daily intake of aluminum, that is, do not appear to interfere with metabolic processes. The adverse effects of aluminum reported in the more recent years resulted from the inhalation or ingestion of aluminum in concentrations many times greater than the amounts present under normal circumstances, unquote. What that basically means is to have any kind of aluminum toxicity, you've got to be eating a lot of aluminum. And you got to be using a lot of aluminum cans and a lot of aluminum utensils, and you got to be breathing in a lot of aluminum chemtrails. For most of us, aluminum ingestion is not going to be a problem. Secondly, the form of aluminum that comes from plants and the animals that eat those plants and plant-derived mineral supplements like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is organic colloidal aluminum. It's protected by compounds that plants make that attach themselves to these metals and chemically transform them. This is such an important point because I keep hearing this idea about this confusion about metals and minerals. There's metals and there's minerals that are toxic. There's metals and minerals that are non-toxic, and they can be the same metal and mineral. There can be, you can have aluminum that's non-toxic. You can have aluminum that's toxic depending on what a plant does to it. This is the difference between plant-derived minerals and metallic minerals. This is called organic minerals. Organic minerals are the kinds that are transformed by plants, and inorganic minerals. Minerals that are organic, have been transformed by plants, are not toxic. In other words, natural aluminum that's found in foods, natural aluminum that's made in plants, not the aluminum from food processing chemicals, not the aluminum from vaccines, not the aluminum from drugs. The aluminum that's found in plants is non-toxic. Additionally, there is some evidence, albeit not a lot of evidence, but there is some that suggests that aluminum may actually have some nutritional value. Yesterday I talked about an article that discussed the health benefits of aluminum as it involves energy production chemistry. A dietary deficiency of aluminum in goats was shown to result in increased abortions, as well as nervous system breakdown, as well as decreased longevity. Aluminum has been shown, aluminum deficiency has been shown to decrease growth in chicks, and aluminum has been described in experiments as being required for bone growth, for DNA synthesis, as well as for energy metabolism, and you can find All this information on page 15 of the book, Clinical Nutrition of the Essential Trace Elements and Minerals, published by the Humana Press. Now, metallic aluminum that's found in antacids and various drugs and baking powder, vaccines, food processing chemicals, this is not the same as organic, colloidal, plant-derived aluminum. That stuff is toxic. Metallic aluminum, drug aluminum, vaccine aluminum, processing chemical, food processing chemical aluminum, aluminum and chemtrails. That stuff is toxic if it's ingested in sufficient amounts. Nobody knows what those amounts are, but certainly you don't want to be interacting with the stuff if you don't have to. Yes, metallic aluminum, the metal, non-food form, is in sufficient quantities. Again, no one really knows what those are, but in sufficient quantities, it's very likely going to be a problem if you ingest enough of it. Aluminum can interfere with other minerals, phosphorus, magnesium, maybe calcium. It's probably a good idea not to be ingesting a lot of this metallic form of aluminum, but this is not the same as the aluminum that's processed by plants and ingested by animals that eat those plants, or the aluminum that's in the plant-derived mineral products, the longevity products like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. Remember, aluminum is abundant. If it was all that toxic, we'd be in big trouble. Is excessive ingestion of metallic aluminum a problem? Perhaps. In laboratory experiments, high amounts do indicate there is some brain toxic effects, high amounts. And there's also probably kidney effects too. The kidney's going to be eliminating some of that aluminum, but you got to ingest lots of aluminum for these things to happen. And whether or not, aside from in drugs and perhaps in processed foods, we get enough to cause the problems up for debate. All right, we'll come back. We'll talk about neurotransmitters. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. All right, so I hope I cleared that up about aluminum. If you are interested in protection from aluminum, there's lots of great supplements that can protect you from aluminum. N-acetylcysteine, NAC, one of my all-time favorite supplements, is very protective. Selenium can be protective. Vitamin E is protective. Sulfur in the MSM form. You can use something called citrate. Citrate's kind of interesting stuff. It's found in lemons and limes and citrus fruits. Citrate has some interesting chelating properties that can chelate aluminum as well as other heavy metals out of your system. Vitamin C can be helpful. Zeolite can also be helpful. Zeolite actually is made with aluminum. It contains aluminum, but it's a protected type of aluminum, and it will suck out heavy metals out of the body. And then chlorella, spirulina, algae all have chelating properties that can chelate metals out of the body, including aluminum. And of course, you always want to make sure that you're on a good nutritional supplement program, especially one that features colloidal, organic, plant-derived minerals, like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. Okay. Back to our conversation about the brain and the nerve chemical acetylcholine. Nerve gas and pesticides both work by affecting this neurotransmitter, this nerve chemical. When I say neurotransmitter, I mean nerve chemical. These are chemicals that are released out of nerves and cause nerve cells to have their effects. Pesticides are actually a type of nerve gas. Pesticides are nerve gas for insects, or nerve gas is a type of pesticide. Nerve gas is a pesticide for human beings. Either way, both of these deadly chemicals work by affecting the nerve chemical acetylcholine. Remember, acetylcholine has relaxing effects. Problem is, nerve gas and pesticides have super relaxing effects, extra relaxing effects. They relax nerves a lot. That's why they call it nerve gas. They relax nerves. The super relaxation effect on the nervous system causes muscles to become so relaxed they don't move. And this especially affects the respiratory system. And it's this respiratory depression or respiratory arrest that's actually responsible for, in large part responsible for these chemicals' effects. Pesticides that affect acetylcholine, this nerve transmitter, also can have negative effects on the production of the nutrient choline, which is not only a building block of acetylcholine, but it's a building block of all the cells, all the cell membranes, and it's an important nutrient for fat metabolism as well as sugar processing and hormone processing. Now remember, pesticides are going to be in fruits. Pesticides are going to be in vegetables, and sometimes you can't even rinse the stuff off. Of course, if you are using non-organic pesticide-covered berries and fruits and vegetables, you really want to make sure you're rinsing the stuff off well. You can use a dilute solution of bleach. You can use hydrogen peroxide. They make they make pesticide-removing products that you can use. You can use even just plain old water. We'll get some of it out. But sometimes the pesticides are sprayed on the plants, and as the plants are growing or as the fruits are growing, the pesticide is actually embedded inside the plant, and they're difficult to rinse off. So you're not going to be able to get all of the pesticides out. Even if you eat organic, you're still going to get something some toxicity just because it's in the ground and it's in the water that even organic crops are watered with. So you're not going to get all the pesticides out of your plants and vegetables, and pesticides can certainly have a negative effect on choline production and can affect, have negative effects on all the acetylcholine kinds of properties, all the nerve transmission effects that acetylcholine is involved with. So use organic, rinse your veggies and fruits off with water or any kind of anti-pesticide solution that you could buy in the produce department at your food store. Supplementing with choline is also a good strategy if you think that you're being exposed to pesticides, using choline as a supplement, or eating choline-containing foods, eggs, dairy, fish, organ meats. If you're a vegan, you can use nuts or soy to get your choline. There's also going to be some choline in beans and in seeds. For dessert, you can eat chocolate. Chocolate contains significant amounts of choline, and if you mix it with some peanut butter, then you can get extra choline because there's choline in peanut butter as well. Then there's a very interesting relationship between tobacco and acetylcholine. As it turns out, nicotine acts like the nerve transmitter, the nerve chemical acetylcholine. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine. This is one of the reasons why people like to have cigarettes for their relaxing properties, like to smoke cigarettes because they have a relaxing effect. The acetylcholine, or the nicotine, acts like acetylcholine, has a kind of relaxing effect. Acetylcholine, this nerve chemical, sits inside a little socket on nerve cells, just like a key fits into a lock. This is how all hormones work. They sit inside cells, and they, just like a key fits into a lock, and they switch it on, and all kinds of effects happen inside whatever cell it is, whether it's a nerve cell or any other cell. This socket or lock is called a receptor. And nicotine can sit in this receptor just as well as acetylcholine can. Biologists and biochemists actually call this little plug that acetylcholine rests in on a nerve cell, they call it a nicotinic receptor, or a nicotine receptor. It gets named after the nicotine that's found in tobacco, and this, as I say, accounts in large measure for the relaxing effects that are associated with smoking. Nicotine is essentially a nerve chemical. It's essentially a neurotransmitter. It essentially has pesticide-like effects. Nicotine is actually a natural pesticide that the tobacco plant makes to poison its enemies, to keep people from eating it, to keep people from smoking it even. The reason it's got pesticide-like effects is because it actually is a pesticide. It's a phytochemical toxin. It's a plant chemical toxin. It's a plant chemical pesticide that the tobacco plant makes as a defensive weapon. It's a natural plant pesticide. This phenomenon of plants making pesticides is very, very important to recognize. I'm talking about plants making their own natural pesticides. This is a very interesting phenomenon because most of us think that vegetables are always kind and always benign and always gentle, and there's no problem. You can eat all the vegetables you want. This isn't true. I talk to so many people about their health issues, and when I say you got to watch out for the foods you're eating, people will tell me, well, I just eat salads. I'm just a vegetarian. I eat really, really well, forgetting that plants and vegetables make toxins. Plants and vegetables make toxins that can cause arthritis, that can cause autoimmune disease, that human beings can react to in many, many different negative ways. Plants make defensive chemicals to keep their enemies, us, or other animals, from eating them. And while no one eats tobacco, and by the way, if you did eat tobacco, you would get very, very sick and probably die. If you ate the amount of nicotine that's in a pack of cigarettes, you'd probably die. Nicotine is a major toxin when it's eaten, although it's nowhere near as toxic when it's smoked. If you orally ingest, if you eat that same amount of nicotine, you get extremely sick. You probably would die. All right, I got more to say here about nicotine, and then we'll take your phone calls as well. 855-660-4261 is our number on the bright side. We'll be back right after this. Okay, so nicotine and acetylcholine are similar. They got a lot of things in common. In fact, acetylcholine, the receptors that link up with acetylcholine on nerve cells, are actually called by biochemists nicotine receptors, or nicotinic receptors. Nicotine is pretty strong stuff. Kind of interesting. If you were to eat the same amount of nicotine that you smoke, you would probably get very sick. You could very likely die. In fact, I think you could probably die by eating a pack of cigarettes, the nicotine in a pack of cigarettes, even though you can smoke them. And you'd still get sick, but you don't get, you obviously don't die right away. Nicotine is pretty deadly stuff, as it turns out. The foods that contain foods that are in the same family as the tobacco plant also have toxins in them. Eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, sweet peppers, hot peppers. These are generally called nightshade vegetables, and tobacco is an example of a nightshade vegetable. And these kinds of this family of plants contain some pretty particularly nasty plant toxins, natural pesticides that can exacerbate all kinds of inflammatory health issues, especially arthritis. If you have arthritis, you really want to be aware of these nightshade vegetables: eggplants, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, as well as nicotine. So nicotine is an acetylcholine mimicking transmitter, albeit a toxic one because of its similarity to natural biochemistry. We make our own nicotine. Like substances, the body becomes used to nicotine. And this is what nicotine addiction is. Nicotine enters the brain with great ease, and in short order, the brain becomes to depend on nicotine, and we become to depend on nicotine. That's called addiction. Nicotine is as addictive as heroin. It's as addictive as cocaine. Two other substances, by the way, that are similar to natural biochemicals, and anyone who's had to quit smoking can tell you that getting off nicotine is really, really tough. Nicotine is made from vitamin B3. That's another interesting phenomenon in biochemistry. Nicotine and vitamin B3, niacin, are very similar. Nicotine in the body is actually made from vitamin B3. Another relaxing molecule, you may have heard of something called nicotinic acid. And this is a form of nicotine, also a form of niacin. I don't want to say form of, but very similar molecules. And one helpful strategy for weaning yourself off of tobacco is to use timed release niacin in high doses, maybe 200 to 400 milligrams a day. Of course, make sure whenever you take one of the B vitamins, you want to make sure that you're balancing it out with the rest of the B vitamins. If you're going to use niacin, time release niacin, to wean yourself off of nicotine, make sure you're using your Beyond Tangy Tangerine with your timed release niacin. The Beyond Tangy Tangerine contains all your B vitamins in generous amounts. Okay, time to hit our phones. 855-660-4261 is our number. Let's go to James in Virginia. What's going on, James? Welcome to the bright side.
Wow, I'm delighted to get on so quickly. I can't believe it. Anyway, quick question. Well, actually I got two, but I didn't tell the pre-screener about the second one. But anyway, the first one is my wife has hypopituitarism, and she's taking levothyroxine.
For her pituitary? You sure it's not the thyroid?
No, that's what it is. And, well, that's what they say anyway, but she's taking levothyroxine, 75 micrograms, and also she's taking hydrocortisone, 20 milligrams.
Okay, now, how old is your wife?
She's 68.
And height to weight, is she overweight at all or underweight at all?
Maybe slightly overweight. Her belly's a little bit fat, but she's pretty tiny. But she's
all right. Now the pituitary gland. If you got a pituitary disorder, you got to have some other stuff going on. That doesn't just happen all of a sudden. What's her health history? Does she have any kind of?
It seems I've been married to her for 2.5 years, but she had some severe hemorrhaging with her last child some years ago.
All right. So she had some hormonal problems her whole life, probably. Would that have been the case? Problems with periods or problems getting pregnant or anything like that?
I don't think any problems.
Well, you may not know if you've only been married to her for a couple of years, and she's 68 years old.
South America. She's from South America, Guyana. Grew up there. She's only been over here for like 30 years, so I don't know what some of that.
Okay, well, here's what you got to do. You got, as I said so many times, this program, the longest journey begins with a single step. We got to start where we can start. You can't treat the pituitary without treating the rest of the body. First things first. Digestive system, first things first. Now, there's no way that she doesn't have any digestive problems. If she's truly hypopituitary, she's got to have some digestive problems just from that. But chances are she hasn't been processing her fats, her fatty nutrients, essential fatty acids, and fats from foods for a long time. That usually is what happens if she's got problems, either fertility problems or reproductive problems or menstrual problems or any kind of problems with the female reproductive system, as well as problems with the pituitary gland. Chances are she hasn't been processing her fats for a long period of time. So I'd be focusing, number one, on using fatty vitamins and fatty nutrients first of all. That would be things like the essential fatty acids, the ultimate EFAs, vitamin A, vitamin E. She's going to run some serious problems with deficiencies in these vitamins if she doesn't really start addressing these quickly. 20,000 international units of vitamin A, 400 international units of vitamin E. She probably would be wise to get on maybe 5,000 micrograms of vitamin K2 a day. and then making sure she's getting some significant sun, not burning though, but some significant sun to get her vitamin D3, or vitamin D. And then also using the essential fatty acids, especially fish oil, will get her some vitamin D as well, and make sure she's getting her omega-3s as well as her omega-6s. That's one of the neat things about the ultimate essential fatty acids is you'll get both the omega-3s and the omega-6s. Then you want to make sure that you're absorbing fats, that you're processing fats out of the digestive system, and there's lots of great nutrients for that. If you want to use the ultimate enzymes from Longevity, if you want to use the Longevity products, get on the ultimate enzymes. The biolumin nightly essence is really interesting. We touch on that periodically as far as it regards fat metabolism. This is one of the hidden gems, hidden benefits, I should say, of probiotics, of good bacteria, is they help you process fats. And without fat, if you can't process fats, you can't make hormones. So making sure she's processing fats at the gut level, absorbing those fats is important. That would be the biolumin nightly essence. And then in addition to the ultimate enzymes, she may want to throw in some bile salts. You can get bile salts. You can get bile salts by themselves at a health food store. There is some bile salts in the ultimate enzymes. And then one of my favorite, all-time favorite fat processing nutrients is lecithin. Lecithin not only will help you absorb fats, but it's also a good source of choline, which we just talked about, which on its own can help you process fats. Choline is also important for sugar metabolism, and that leads to my the second subject, which is helping her use sugar, helping her body use sugar. Hang tight, James. We've got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll come back and finish up. And if you're on hold, hang tight. We'll get to you as well. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side on the Genesis Communication Network. We'll be back right after this. Okay, we are back on The Bright Side talking to James in Virginia. James, I'm going to go a little bit quick here, okay, my man? In addition to all the digestive stuff, you also want to make sure that she's stabilizing her blood sugar. Sometimes diabetes can be involved with hypopituitarism, and that means staying away from foods that mess up her blood sugar, as well as using nutrients that help her stabilize her blood sugar. We talked about choline before we went to the break. That can be helpful. Also, the B vitamins, very helpful. In fact, the B vitamins are probably your main nutrients for everything, for the pituitary, for the diabetes, for the potential diabetes, and also for digestive health. Use the Beyond Tangy Tangerine for that. Let's do the sweeties from Longevity. Chromium and vanadium can help keeping her away from sugar, insulin spiking and blood sugar spiking foods, fruit juices and breads and pastas. That's always going to be a good idea. Right. There's also, you mentioned that she was on, they're giving her a thyroid medicine, levothyroxine, which tells me there may be some kind of link to hypothyroidism. They may suspect that there's a hypothyroid link. Does she have constipation, or is she losing her hair, dry skin, or anything like that? Problems with cold extremities, fingers, toes?
Some hair turning gray, a little bit thinning.
Well, that's not too significant. Does she have cold extremities, fingers and toes, and that kind of thing? Is she?
Yeah, occasionally, complaints.
Okay. About that. Then she probably does have a thyroid problem, which means that there's probably some kind of connection to the adrenal glands. There's an important link between your stress glands and your pituitary, and the fact that she's hypothyroid tells me that she may be burnt out at the adrenal level. And there's a couple things you want to do for that. Using Celtic sea salt and water, that may help her. The mineral zinc may help her, 50 milligrams of zinc a day. And then the vitamin C, which Dr. Thomas Levy calls the primal panacea, that may be helpful for the adrenal glands, and it's just helpful for everything. 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. You'll get some vitamin C in the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. And then last but not least, if she's hypopituitary, chances are she's not making melatonin, and that can have some really, really negative effects. Melatonin, I just did a blog post on melatonin, actually, where I wrote that melatonin is not just for sleep, even though most of us know that melatonin is involved in sleep. She probably has a little insomnia too, I would guess. And that's a sign that there's that she's deficient in melatonin, and being deficient in melatonin can lead to cancer. Being deficient in melatonin can lead to accelerated aging. Being deficient in melatonin can lead to a lot of big problems, heartburn, digestive problems. So maybe she might want to try 3 to 6 milligrams of a sublingual, that is under the tongue, version of melatonin, and have her suck on that 3 to 6 milligrams, 1 to 2 sublingual tablets before she goes to bed. So lots of good ideas there for you. Did you have anything else that you wanted to ask me?
Quickly, it's probably somewhat related. She was discovered some hepatitis a few months ago, or maybe last year. I forgot when it was. But apparently it was gotten from blood transfusions in South America some years ago.
Well, you if she has hepatitis, and the way you treat hepatitis, no matter what kind of hepatitis it is or where it came from, is you got to be kind and loving to the body, especially in terms of the digestive system and in terms of toxicity, and that includes prescription drugs that you put into the body. The liver does all kinds of stuff, but it's mainly a digestive organ and a detoxification organ. That means being really, really careful with the kind of food she's eating and eating less food if possible, using more nutrients but less calories, using using a nutritional supplement program but not eating a lot of food. And then secondly, if she's on prescription drugs, try to keep her dose down as much as possible, or if she can wean herself off those prescription drugs, that would be great as well. Keeping poisons out of the body, whether they're digestive poisons or drug poisons, is the best way to take care of the liver. I'm sorry, go ahead, James.
Well, it's just those two prescriptions, levothyroxine and hydrocortisone.
Well, the hydrocortisone, that's going to put a burden on the liver. They both will, but the hydrocortisone is pretty burdensome. If she can wean herself off the hydrocortisone, that would be great. If not, then do everything else that we just talked about, including focusing on the digestive system, especially fats, the blood sugar system, and then working with adrenal health. And then I'd be throwing in 3 to 6 milligrams a night of melatonin, too. Thanks so much for your call, man. Anything else?
You didn't mention anything about the digestive, the probiotics. I was surprised.
And then, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. The Biolumin Nightly Essence, absolutely, the probiotics for fat metabolism.
Okay.
Thanks so much, James. God bless, and good luck with your wife. I appreciate your call. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Steve in Virginia. Welcome to the bright side, Steve. Good morning.
Hey, I have to speak for him. This is Rosie.
Oh, hey, Rose. I was talking about aluminum. Did you hear me talk? Did you hear me talk about aluminum this morning?
Yeah, I was thinking my concern is because, they have been bombarding us in the past about the relationship between aluminum and Alzheimer's, and I was concerned about that. I'm
not buying it. Listen to the first 10 minutes. Have them listen to the first 10 minutes of the program today, where I talked about aluminum. How can I help you?
I started a little bit later because I had to do something, but my question is this: I just called this morning a friend of ours, and he said that he fell off from his bed. I don't know how. I don't know if he had imbalance or what. And he said that he started bleeding. And I wanted you to explain to us, the physiology why. And then how doctors are. They put a stent in his nose.
He got a nosebleed. He fell and got a nosebleed. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, and then they put a stent.
How bad was the nosebleed? He couldn't stop the bleeding. The bleeding wouldn't stop.
That's what they were saying.
That's a sign. Either the blood is becoming really thin, or more than likely, the blood vessels are becoming weak. When you have bleeding that doesn't stop, the first thing I think about is weak blood vessels. Remember, the body breaks down. The whole body breaks down as we age. It just kind of dissolves. It falls apart. Especially the part of the body that we call connective tissue. Remember, the body's made up of right? The connective tissue, the muscle tissue, the surface tissue, the epithelia tissue, and the nervous tissue. Those are the 4 components of the body. When you have bleeding that doesn't stop, that tells me the connective tissue is starting to break down. That's usually a sign that the body is degenerating. So a couple things that you want to do. Again, focus on digestive health and wellness. That's the first thing to do, because if you're not absorbing protein, you're not absorbing your vitamins, you're not going to be able to build strong blood vessels. There's nutrients that you can use to help build strong blood vessels. Vitamin C is probably the most important. The glucogel caps can also help. We don't talk about that anywhere near enough, how the glucogel caps help build strong blood vessels. The glucosamine is involved in connective tissue building. Make sure you take vitamin C with your glucogel caps. Essential fatty acids are also very important. You can also use something called high hyaluronic acid. That may help build strong blood vessels, as well as helping build strong connective tissue too. And then don't forget your whey protein. Especially and animal protein in general, as opposed to vegetable protein. Animal protein, whether it's whey protein or dairy or eggs or meat, contain building blocks for connective tissue, building blocks that help grow connective tissue, and that's something else to think about. But if you have a digestive problem, you're not going to be absorbing those. So make sure that if you're using whey protein, or you're going to be eating more meat to get these kinds of amino acids for building strong blood vessels, make sure that you're using the ultimate enzymes. Make sure that you're acidifying the stomach using apple cider vinegar after your meals too. too. And then you may want to throw in some extra bile salts and some extra digestive support, lecithin and choline and taurine, these substances that can help produce bile and support the digestive system. And then probiotics are always important for good digestive health. Focus on building strong blood vessels using vitamin C, essential fatty acids, high hyaluronic acid, perhaps even minerals like magnesium and calcium can also help. And then making sure that you're absorbing all of these, and protein, and making sure that you're absorbing all of these nutrients with digestive enzymes and other digestive support. Okay, does that help, Rose?
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless. Have a beautiful day, ma'am. Okay, real quick, Susan in Arkansas. I got about a minute left. What's going on? How can we help you?
Hey, thank you so much. I got your basic building blocks, the EFAs. I listen to your show all the time, the probiotics, everything that you just said to that last caller. I've got a husband who has alcohol issue, and I know you were talking about the tobacco today and how that responds to the cell. Can you give me some advice beyond just
for getting off of alcohol using nutrition?
Yes, please.
Well, I'll tell you. In addition to, it's not so much using nutrients to get to wean yourself off of alcohol. It's using nutrients to protect you from the alcohol. One of the things that happens with alcohol is it causes us to lose a lot of nutrients, especially water-soluble nutrients, because alcohol is a diuretic. So making sure he's getting lots of B vitamins and lots of vitamin C and lots of electrolytes is majorly important. And the B vitamin thiamine is extra important. That's vitamin B1. So saturating himself with water-soluble nutrients, that's the single most important strategy, and that includes minerals, by the way, many of which are water-soluble. That includes minerals, electrolytes, B vitamins, and vitamin C, and I'd be making sure I was using the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. Number one, I'd be using 1,000 to 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Number two, in addition to the B complex that you're going to get from the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, have him use something called a B100 capsule or pill, and I'd be taking those every couple of hours. And then last but most certainly not least, making sure he's getting his electrical minerals, his electrolytes, potassium and calcium, magnesium and such. You'll get some in the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, but also using vegetables and vegetable juices. One of the neat things about weaning yourself off of alcohol or weaning yourself off of sugar or any kind of crappy food is once you give yourself really good food, once you give yourself really good nutrients, you're going to have less of a tendency to want to poison your body with drugs or with alcohol or with poison crapola food. Thanks for your call, Susan. Appreciate it. That's all the time we have for today. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Have yourselves a wonderful, beautiful day. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye for now.